Welcome to the Rebel Tribe podcast, where empowerment meets attitude and sass meets savvy. We're not just another podcast. We are your virtual tribe of fierce women ready to conquer the world. We typically spend time teaching you how to smash through stereotypes and break those barriers and redefine what it means to be a woman in today's world. But today we've got a little bit of a different guest. My guest today is Dr. Bryan Raya, host of the Doing Business Right podcast, owner of DBR Bookkeeping and DBR Publishing. Now, you may ask, what does all that have to do with empowering women? A lot, actually, as I found out after I got to know him. So I want you all to meet him too, because he's pretty awesome, actually. So, Bryan, welcome.
Well, welcome. Hello, everybody out there in the digital space. Great to be here. Thank you so much for having me here and talking. I'm super excited. Like I said, you're like one of my, heroes out there in the digital world that I've been following for a long time. So I'm super excited to be part of this.
Well, I first found you through your books. So let's talk about those first, because that is how I first found you. You wrote this amazing book about ChatGPT, and you know that I'm a huge fan of AI if used properly, and I use it a lot.
Hmm.
And this is a tool that women can use because sometimes while we're struggling to find our voice, we need a little nudge,
Yep.
just a little nudge into how to put the thoughts in our head into the proper words. And I'm not ever advocating that you copy and paste anything that you get off of ChatGPT or any other
Hmm.
AI, but it's a tool that can help you find your voice. So I want to talk about that book because it's awesome. What prompted you to write that book?
Well, so as a bookkeeper, I'm always thinking about bottom line, looking at numbers and things like that. And then obviously ChatGPT is a relatively new thing in kind of our not necessarily AI, but this very new tool that a lot of people are starting kind of getting into. So I started researching into it, started kind of learning about it and how that can help specifically small business owners. And again, trying to find, different prompts and how to develop prompts, how to develop voice, you can use it for maybe social media, for idea generation, even for sales and marketing, just trying to diversify what you can do. So I did some research into it to really help small business owners and entrepreneurs just be more efficient with their time. Because as you mentioned, sometimes it's really hard to you're at your computer and you're like, what do I want to say? And you're sitting there for an hour or so, and sometimes it's really not the greatest. But I think with this great tool, you can just kind of like have conversations with ChatGPT. What about this? Can you make this expand on this? Can you make this more concise? Can you be more playful? Can you be more academic? Can you um, ask it to target maybe a certain demographic or a certain type of industry and use lingo and terms that would resonate with their audiences. And you can start really kind of like going, oh, that's a good way to say that. That's a good way to word that. Or just to give me a list of 20 ideas of some topics that might be relevant to a specific industry or topic. So that's why I made that book because obviously there's a lot of books on Chat GPT of here's what Chat GPT can do for you in the world, but I really want to make it something more specific for small business owners like us who are just trying to find tools to help us.
And that's why I loved it so much, because so many of my audience, the Rebel Tribe and the smart and sassy business women, we're small
Hmm.
women-owned businesses, and we do sometimes need a little extra help to come up with the words and the ideas to help us stand out in that, because it's noisy out there online, in case you haven't noticed.
Oh yes, it is very noisy out there and and you get it as a content developer and writer. It's like, how do you find that voice and be unique that can get out there? So I think as I started exploring it, and I think, even at this early stages, I think it's only get even better as a tool. So I'm excited about that. And I'm just trying to encourage entrepreneurs, small business owners to embrace. That's why, embracing Chat GPT for business success. I think artificial intelligence and these models are not going to go away. So I do think that the business owners who start embracing these AI tools are the ones that are going to really thrive here in the next 15, 20 years.
And not even that, if you're not in business for yourself, so many businesses are beginning to use it that if you understand it and have mastered it,
Mhm.
that's just one more skill to put on your resume, ladies.
Exactly. Exactly. And and it does take some time. You have to, I'm sure you've messed with it or all the AI tools. Like you have to kind of mess with it and kind of it's a different type of communicating with AI is different than how you like would communicate with Google or a search engine. They're very different in as far as your prompts and generation. But we talked about that. I remember when we first got used Google, I remember like, so what, how do you use Google? Like I remember going to that for the first time 25 years ago, and going like, well, what am I supposed to type in? But now it's standard practice. Oh yeah, just Google it, just do this and we can find things. So just another tool that we're gonna evolve with in our society.
It does take some time to learn the prompts. I'm reminded of when I was in the military, we did a lot of cutting edge computer work, and it was always, that acronym, garbage in, garbage out.
Yep.
Yeah, what you type is what you get.
Yeah, it's
So
true.
it's a matter of learning what to type to get the answer that you want, and it takes a little
Yeah.
practice. It does.
It
It takes.
does take practice. It does definitely take practice. So I would definitely encourage people to don't get discouraged if you're just using it for the first time. Just give it a couple tries. As just with anything, we're all bad at something when we first try it. And but that's entrepreneurship, right? That's small business. Like, we're gonna make mistakes, probably a lot of them. And I think that's just something that is just a great way to learn and grow with that.
So, what do you think about AI in general? I mean, you know how much I love it, and I joke a lot with my gals about, it's not going away, so you might as well learn to love it, because when the overlords come, you'll be able to
Yeah, that's
be like,
right.
hey, I embraced you from the beginning.
That's right.
But and I know that is a fear of a lot of people, that it's going to take away jobs, and it's going to take away, different things. It's going to change business, and it is going to change business, but I don't see it. I don't know that it will take away jobs. I mean, I don't know too many jobs that you always need that human decision factor, I think. So I don't know that that's a realistic fear, but what do you think?
No, yeah, yeah. Well, I think, sorry, that was like a whole bunch of words. I didn't mean anything. I do think that it's going to change what some of the jobs and how they are. I think that people will be able to be more efficient with their time because AI will, help accelerate the process. So instead of having a brainstorming session that of 30 minutes where we're trying to think of things, you can use AI and get a brainstorming session in a few minutes. So now it's like, cool. Now I have all that extra time. I have 27 minutes to be developing and making a better product service. I think better customer client relationships. I think people will be able to talk to people a little bit more because they're not so stuck behind doing minutia, boring tasks, repetitive tasks. So I think it has the potential to really actually make our culture as a society more vibrant because we'll actually have more time to communicate and talk to each other. So that's why I think people are like, well, AI is going to take over the world. Like, no, I don't think it's going to take over the world. I think it's going to allow us humans to still operate at very high levels, but still be able to be personable and talk and make good decisions instead of being so swamped with all these little details that we actually can think about and make good decisions for our business, for our lives.
Thank you. I agree. I know it's helped me immensely, just with some days you're just sitting here going, like you said, what do I want to talk about today? What do I want to write about?
Uh-huh.
My mind is blank. I'm tired. I had like 4 hours of sleep last night, and I'm tired, but it's time for my newsletter. I don't know what to talk about. Quick, give me some ideas. boom, there they are. Like,
Yeah, and it's great. It's like, oh, that's a good one, and expand upon that, or even just like it's really cool what you can do with some of the AI tools like ChatGPT and what you're asking it to do. I've asked it to make jokes. I've asked it to give me some quirky bit of history or maybe how can you connect this idea to this idea and give me some ideas on how to connect concepts together. And I was like, oh, that's a good way to maybe use that. Because sometimes like I want to connect this and this, but how do I do that? Oh, here's a good. And again, just a great idea generation tool, just to really get that, leverage that advantage to communicate with your audiences.
now, I really want to talk about your podcast because you
Yeah.
are also a podcast host and you've been doing it a little longer than I have, actually, a lot longer than I have.
Not that much longer.
And I admit he's much more, he is not me, ladies. He's so much more organized and professional. He's got a studio and everything. I was impressed. But the bottom line is it's a wonderful podcast because it showcases businesses, small
Mhm.
businesses. And again, there's so many in my audience that are small business owners that to have an opportunity to listen and get insight and ideas from his guests. And who knows, if you connect with him, someday he may reach out to you and go, hey, would you like to be a guest on my podcast?
Yeah.
So it's an amazing tool. And again, he's empowering the women-owned business community by giving them this this outlet, this way to reach an audience and this way to learn from others in the industry. So it's and doing business right is he asked that question. I went back and listened to some of the episodes after you told me that you asked that of everybody. And that is like the last question he asks every guest is, what does it mean to do business right? And some of the answers are they're just fabulous. So
Yeah.
why did you start a podcast? Because with all the other things you have between the books and the bookkeeping business, why did you decide, well, let me add one more thing in there. Let me do a podcast.
Well, for me, I got I'm an extrovert. I like talking. I like people. And as a bookkeeper, it's I know some of my bookkeeping colleagues, they're kind of introverts. They're totally content working at a computer, working with numbers. And so again, in business, you're always thinking about like, well, what are my strengths? And I was like, one of my strengths is talking to people, and relating and connecting and promoting others in a way. So, talking with Adam Robinson of The Bridge, he was like, hey, well, why don't you do this? You have a natural ability to do that, and you would make a really great podcast host. And I was like, so I kind of took him up on it, and I've had a blast doing it. Just again, I've talked to all types of industries. It's great for me to learn. Again, I feel like I'm not a business master at all. And I have learned so much from the different industries that, again, that helps me. I think for my business as a whole, as a bookkeeper and my books, it has helped build credibility. Just like what you're doing, this helps build your credibility. And also it gives a platform where people can hear my voice and hear my thoughts and see that, oh, there is a guy behind the bookkeeping and there's a personality and there's a story of that. It actually and it has helped my business, because I know some of my clients are like, hey, I saw your podcast, and that was the thing that kind of got them to take that next step for my business or for my books. So it's been a great advantage for me for my business overall. So, and I just think it's cool. It's right? Isn't it cool like to be in the studio? You got the microphones and you're doing the thing, and I find it very fun, and I feel very comfortable in that medium.
Oh, I love it. I have no idea what I was missing out on until I started it. So yeah, someday I'll have a studio. Right
No,
now,
this this is great though, and I really encourage any entrepreneur, even if it's something like this, just having conversations, getting it recorded, and then sharing it with others so that other people can hear other people's stories. That's what I think is great. That's why I always start my podcast. What's your background? What's your history? Because people can be like, hey, that kind of sounds like my story. I did this for a while and I'm looking for this, or and it makes this whole entrepreneurship, small business world seem like it's doable and there's hope. Like, and that hey, I can do this. I can do this business. And I'm sure part of your business model, like that's why I think I love what you're doing, is that trying to encourage and empower women to like, you can do this. There are so many women with a very similar story, just like yours, that you can latch onto and get inspired from.
That's one of the reasons I did start the podcast, because I know this is going to be one of the big forms of communication. I think it's down the road. It's going to be as important as Facebook and all the others is the podcast. And I want them to see, because everyone knows I am not techie. Okay. We all know that. I freely admit that I am not techie. Okay.
Yeah, I am not techie either. I am.
So if I can do a podcast, you can do a podcast. Okay. This is not hard. And if you need help, just holler at me and I will be happy to help you. And if I don't have the answer, guess what? I bet you he does, because he's a little better at this than I am. But he's a little more professional, maybe a little more techie. And if not, we both know someone now who knows this stuff well. So
I know again, and that's what's been great about networking and building relationships is that I know people that can help me with all this stuff, just like you.
so but I love the concept, doing business right. How did you arrive at that as like the format for your podcast?
Well, it was funny. So DBR, so my original name is, DBR Bookkeeping. That was like my first business entity. And DBR actually originally stood for, and still does stand for Dr. Bryan Raya. Those were my initials. So I had that. And so in my first couple months of my business, I'm driving around and I'm like, what other things, words, phrases could I use DBR? And I thought of doing business right. And I was like, yeah, I really like that. And when I was just talking to Adam about doing my first podcast, and he was like, what do you want to do? Do you want to like do Brian's bookkeeping stuff? And I was like, what about just doing business right? Because I think that's really goes what I'm trying to strive for in my business and my values. Um, and it's just it's very powerful. It's an action. It's something that really resonates, I think, with a lot of people, and it has a flexibility to go into almost all business industries doing business right. So, because I didn't want to do a bookkeeping podcast, like let's talk bookkeeping with businesses. I wanted it something to be a little bit more personable and flexible with that. So I went with the doing business right as my name. It helps with my brand and leaning into brand and building brand, which is a huge part of business. So I think it just really worked out and kind of the stars aligned because I had just coined the term doing business right maybe 2 months before I did my first podcast. So it was all kind of all very, very new. And it's really been exciting to see how just that concept has really grown in the past year.
So you asked all of us, so now I get to ask you, what does it mean to do business right?
Oh my goodness. That's you're the first person who's ever asked asked me that question. And I've asked that question so many times and I've heard as you heard so many great answers. And for me, I think doing business right, it really goes back to the core to as you as a person. Um, and really having good, strong values, having integrity as a business owner, and believing in what you do, believing in others. I'm a huge proponent of self-empowerment and going after your dreams and goals. And part of that is that's doing business right. And I think if you are willing to put yourself out there, Be a good person, do what you say you're going to do, provide great products, great services to others. That's doing business right because it's a reflection of you as a person. So for today, that is my answer of what doing business right means to me. It's really about a reflection of your own personal values and how you share that with others in the world. Whether you're super loud and talkative in a social light, or if you're a very hardcore introvert, it doesn't matter. Deep down, find who you are in yourself and be that, because that's doing business right.
I have chihuahuas and they're nipping at my.
Oh,
It's all right. Everybody knows me. I have chihuahuas.
it's awesome. They're just being friendly. They're just saying hi. They just want to see what's going
They're
on.
fighting at my ankle right now because dad's not home to keep them under control.
Oh, okay.
So I love the way that when I look at your podcast as a way to definitely empower the woman entrepreneur. And I'm hoping that some of them will reach out to you or at least listen to your podcast, but I'm hoping that some of them will reach out to you and with the possibility of becoming a guest on your podcast. What exactly are there like requirements or a certain type of business person you're looking for? What does it take to get on your podcast?
Right. Well, it takes just building a relationship with me. I think if you are somebody who has a story to share, you really think that not just like your product or service, but you as a person, you really feel like you have something you want to share with our community and talk about those things, especially if you've been in the entrepreneurial journey for a little bit. I would say that, at least 6 months plus, so that, you can really share like, yep, how did you get into business? Why did you get into business? What's been the challenges you've had in your business, in your industry? Um, and what would you like to share with others of like, yep, I did that, that didn't work. Or I really highly encourage you to do this. This really worked for me. But again, in the end, you have to find what works for you. Those are the type of people I would love to have conversations with on my podcast, especially if they're really interested in reaching out and getting a larger brand and to the communities.
So you see, ladies, all these times that I've been telling you to put your story together, to write out your story, to know what your story is. This is why, okay? Because your story is what makes you different than everybody else. There's someone out there that is
Yes.
walking the same path or very close to it
Mhm.
you are. And when you put that story out there, they look at that and go, oh my gosh, she's right where I was, or she was right where I am now. She can help me because she's been there and found her way out to the other side. I need
Yeah.
to reach out.
And
So
that is so powerful because I've heard incredible stories from my podcast or just people I meet in general. People were like, I wanted to spend more time with my family, or I had kids and I was like a single mom and I was doing this, or my spouse or husband got sick and we needed some other flexibility for their schedules. And I really think we forget that our own personal stories are very powerful because we go like, oh, that's just my life. Yep, I did this, this, and this. But to some other people, it can really inspire others. Um, and I think that's just so important that, don't discredit your own personal story.
and I know sometimes we feel like because we go to these big events, especially if we're in some kind of network marketing or something, we go to these big events and we get that person on stage. It's like the top of the company, and you hear I was broke and living on the street and blah, 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 and you're sitting back there thinking, well, I didn't have any of that. My story is not important because I didn't have any big challenges like that. But your story is important
Mhm.
because not very few people actually had a story like that. So they're more relatable than they are. So
Yeah, yeah. Exactly. And I think what you're, advocating, hey, write your story down, really think about what that is and talk to people and embrace it, all the goods and the bads. And I think it's extremely powerful. I think it's great words. I love what you're doing. I said, I just think huge fan. I'm just like, yes, yes, do it.
I want to talk about bookkeeping because
Yeah,
I'm pretty good with numbers. Okay, I'm a bit of a numbers geek, but I freely admit that I took 2 semesters of accounting in college because they made me. I have no idea why, because I was a pre-med student, so I'm not quite sure why I had to take accounting.
really.
Yes,
Two semesters
and
as
it was the
pre-med.
only class I've ever gotten a C in my entire life. And when I got called in by my academic advisor at the time, and she's like, these C's are going to pull your grade average down a little bit. Do you want to repeat the class? And I was like, no, okay. I'm going to take my C's and be very happy with them.
That's right.
It takes a different kind of mind. I don't care how good you are with numbers, it takes a different kind of mind.
It does.
Grasp accounting. Why, in the name of all that's holy, would you ever look at accounting as a business? I'm sorry, but I don't get it.
Yeah, well, that's funny. Well, so I have this, my background is actually in music. I'm a huge creative. I'm a musician. I've performed hundreds, maybe thousands of times, literally across the world. And so I know a lot of musicians and artists, who are very creative. They love to perform and they're making some money here and there, some money here and there. And that idea of like struggling musician, struggling artist, that's a real thing. They're my friends. And I love them to death. And I was like, how can I help them that's not necessarily more musical advice? Like I can tell them, hey, that sounds great. Let's do this musically, creatively. How can else can I help them? And again, I kind of like numbers and I was kind of interested in that. And I started learning about bookkeeping, accounting principles and stuff like that. And so when I started learning bookkeeping, just kind of like ex more exploratory. And we started getting into the accounting principles, and I won't bore the crowd about like assets, liabilities, equity, and things like that. But there was a point in the process as I was learning this, and here I am. I have my doctorate. I'm highly educated. I think at the time I was in my 40s, and my brain started hurting as I was learning accounting principles and concepts. And I was like, debits and credits, and I was like, oh my goodness. And that was the moment I was like, if I'm struggling with these concepts, then I can only imagine most people are struggling as well. And that's where I was like, again, entrepreneurship and small business, like, let me find an area that people maybe be struggling with and try to help that niche. So, with my creative background and with my extensive experience talking with people and relating to people, I was like, well, if I can relate to people, understand their personal struggle with money or accounting or things like that, and try to bridge that gap between their bookkeeping and how to understand that language, I think I can help people. And that's why I kind of chose it to help that because you're right. There are some people who are like the true hardcore accountant bookkeeper that they're a very special breed of people because you think about the world and you think about money in a very different way. I had to train myself to think about money in a different way. And I still do. I still have to think about, okay, this is going up, down, in, out. And it's cool to do that and to understand. And what I found in bookkeeping is that while there are some basic principles that are in there, there's actually a lot of creativity in bookkeeping. Like your basic fundamentals, but there's ways to quote manipulate the numbers to make them work for you. And me being the creative type, I'm like, ooh, I like that. It doesn't always have to be one way. That's why when you work with a bookkeeper, some bookkeepers will do it different ways. And same thing with CPAs and accountants, there's a lot of ways to kind of do your taxes and all those type of things. So that's why I kind of got into it. I'm enjoying it. It's a fun type of thing. And I really just enjoy helping businesses, my clients, helping them so that they can really focus on their products and services and know that their money side is being accounted for correctly.
Well, I salute you because, like I said, there's no way. Okay. But you're right. It is very, fortunately, my husband's a bigger numbers geek than I am, and he does think of money in a totally different way.
Hmm.
He's not a bookkeeper by trade, but he handles all of that. I freely admit that, yes, I let him handle all of that because it makes my head hurt. But it's very freeing because I'm like you mentioned, very much more the creative side of things. So it works for us. And it's very empowering and freeing to know that I don't have to stress over the numbers. I can just go and create and do do this or do whatever is next on my, where my journey, wherever I'm headed, and know that he's got the other stuff handled. And if I'm getting a little out of control, he'll come, yank me back. So, you either gotta make more, spend less, one of the two.
Basically, yeah.
But it is. So yes, I can see where that is a huge help. And I don't know, thinking back to my class, there weren't a lot of women in that class. So I don't know if it's like the accounting mindset is a male thing. And don't be coming for me, ladies, okay? Don't be coming for me. Okay. I'm not meaning that in any kind of, fact, women are more creative, I think, and men are more, at least that's how, at least everybody I've known, so maybe. But anyway, it's very helpful to be able to hand that off to someone that you trust to be able to take care of that for you.
Yeah.
Who do you work with? I mean, any type of businesses? Are there in particular types of businesses that you work with, or?
So I really love working with service-based businesses because as a musician, as an artist creative, musicians are providing a service. Like, hey, I need a band to perform for my wedding, right? So they provide that service, they get paid for that. There's an exchange, and we're doing that. So, and they're creative. So I feel like I really resonate with those type of businesses. Like photographers. I have a couple photographer clients that I love working with. And again, they just want to do photography. They just want to like create. They just want to take photos and work with their clients, and they don't want to deal with the money side. They know it's important, but they don't really want to deal with it. So I love working with them. I got a cleaning service business. Um, she's great. I also I help Adam with his bookkeeping with the whole bridge and the podcast. I've worked with floral companies. I've worked with musicians. I actually have musician companies, some nonprofit type of entities I've worked with. I've recently signed with a concrete coating business. They do concrete type of projects, which is great. So I really, money's money. That's what I love about bookkeeping, is that the concept of revenue and expenses is very similar no matter what your industry is, right? And then it's just understanding the little tweaks that I might need to know with their businesses. One of my favorite clients out there, he actually makes custom made archery bows,
Sweet.
and they're so cool. Like, I love watching his social media, and I like everything I see on it because like it's just they're colorful, and they ship them out around the country, and they're based right here in Oklahoma. And like he needs help with his bookkeeping, and he was like, I got this home-based business that we're trying to grow, and we make custom-made archery bows. I'm like, that's awesome. So that's what I love about my business, is that I get to talk to a lot of different types of businesses and owners. But if I had a specialty in an area that I'm really trying to focus on, it's those service-based businesses that are providing services to others who just don't want to deal with the money side of it.
So for your podcast and your bookkeeping business, both, are you strictly local, or are you willing to step outside of Northwest Arkansas?
Oh, no, no. A couple of my clients, one of my clients is based out of Minnesota, and one of my clients is based out of Florida. And I've worked with a client. She was based out of, Kansas City, Missouri, a good 4+ hours away. One of my photographers, we started working together while she was still in Wyoming. From I didn't meet her actually for in face to face in for months. So that's what I love about my business model is that I can work with anybody really in the United States. As long as we both got computers and internet and we can Zoom and talk and email. Um, QuickBooks Online, which is my platform that I work with my clients. It's online, it's cloud-based, so we can both get in there and work with it. And it's really cool that I have that flexibility to work with people. Now, of course, I can work with local people. Some of my clients I've gotten coffee with or lunch with, and we talk, but it's not necessarily we need to do that. So if you're out there, no matter where you are, whether you're 5 miles down the road or 500 miles down the highway, um, I can work with you and talk with you and build a relationship with your business.
Awesome. And for podcast guests, are they all local as well? Because I know you're
Yeah,
you're trying to highlight small businesses. So are they all local businesses or can it
yeah.
be?
So all of them have so far have been local. Just because they got to come into the studio, just like you got to come into the place, and get that face-to-face interaction. So if they're within, that 30 to 40 miles of Fayetteville, give or take. We can totally have them. I've had people come all the way up from North Bentonville, almost Bella Vista, coming to the show. It just makes it easier that way. Maybe down the road, I will do stuff like what you're doing and having, virtual guests from far away. But as of right now, it's still local.
Yeah, that might be awesome because the market is so global anymore. I mean,
Yeah,
that's one of the things when I'm talking to get your business online, that's one of the things I bring up is it opens up a global market. You are no longer confined to your small little geographic area. You have a global marketplace now. And that's why it's so important to be visible and to get online and to be heard and be seen because the world is out there and it's looking for
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's what I love about my books. I've sold books literally around the world, I think in 15 different countries. And it's just kind of cool to be like, wow, I'm selling books globally, or, having a podcast that can be seen or heard in so many different places. And I think it's so easy to kind of get like, well, let me see if I can sell within my neighborhood, my city here. Like, well, hey, reach out, go out there. There's people looking. There's people looking for information, um, and they're willing to work with you, um, and it's great.
Well, this has been absolutely fabulous, as I knew it would be, because you do so many different things. And I really wanted to figure out how you've managed to juggle all of them because let's be honest, they're not exactly related. I'm a podcaster and a bookkeeper, and oh,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, the actual tasks are very different, but what I like is that they're all kind of going towards the same goal of doing business right and just really trying to advocate for small businesses, advocate for entrepreneurs, give them resources, give them knowledge, share, promote others. Really, it's all going back to doing business right, this little triangle of and that's what I like about it. Even though they are very different aspects, they all go towards the same goal. And I love it.
so if we wanted to connect with you, what's the best way to reach out to you?
You can go to my website, real simple, dbrbookkeeping.com. Again, just think doing business right, dbrbookkeeping.com. You can see all my previous episodes on there. You can see links to my books that will take you to Amazon. You can go that. My books are also on Audible, on ACX, so you can listen to my books, which is another great resource out there. But so my website is kind of the hub for all of that. You can also find me on Facebook, DBR Bookkeeping or DBR Publishing. Again, I try to get on the other platforms the best I can. I do a little bit of LinkedIn, I do a little bit of Instagram, and I got just like you, I got a TikTok. I got something. Um, but again, very similar to you, Facebook is one of my primary social media platforms that I do. And you also can just Google DBR bookkeeping, and I have a Google business profile on there as well. So you search me and you'll find me, DBR bookkeeping.
And I will put a link to the website in the description. Well,
Awesome.
it has been so much fun talking to you. I just still am trying to sit here figuring out how you juggle all the balls. But apparently you're very good at it because, like I said, I've read your book. It's amazing. I've listened to your podcast, and it's so informative, and you have such a wide variety of guests. Haven't used your bookkeeping services, but who knows? You may
Yeah.
get tired of you may get tired of doing that one day and go, I'm done.
Well, thank you so much for having me on here and having this great discussion. It's a true pleasure, it's a true honor. And again, thank you again for being on my show, a few weeks ago, and sharing your insights. It's just what we're trying to do is just great for people, for entrepreneurs, small business owners. And again, I think what you're doing is trying to empower, especially specifically the women, and you guys can do it. You can do it. Just go out there and do it. And you have so many resources to help you on your journey, like this podcast.
Well, thanks a lot. And thanks to you ladies for tuning in for this episode. Get ready to see more and do more and be more, because we've got some great guests coming in the future. Have a great night and go rock that world on your terms.